In this episode, we're going to be going over the security aspect of your World of Warcraft server. If you're renting a server, you don't have access to anything physically around it. You only have essentially your server. However, what you can do is put a lot of security inside this box. Now, if you do own your server, and you own the physical hardware and such that is also around it, then you can set up measures to properly secure it. For example, you can have your ISP, we're going to pretend that's a square, ISP, and this ISP then will head off into a router, and then from there, this router will then head off and into a firewall, to which then it will head off and into a switch. We're going to make a circle just for funsies, to which then inevitably it leads one way or another to your wonderful server. Now, that being said, you could implement commands for your server at your firewall location and also implement commands at your server location. So when it goes through your ISP, then it hits, of course, your router, firewall, to which then switch, but your firewall already does the majority of the work, and then it hits the server. We could also have is the possibility of two ISPs, to which then, for example, let's say that you are getting hit on one side, and so now you can have your other internet service provider take over and actually, well, more or less, defend it. Two ISPs, to which then pretty much you can do the exact same type of connections and then have it also assisting the server. Now, unfortunately, all of this gets taken away when you do not have your own server and instead you're renting it. So everything that you do has to be done inside this box. Now, this box, as I said in previous videos, already comes with a lot of vulnerabilities. So what we have to do here is we have to configure it to make it actually safe. And one of the things that we can immediately do to make it safe, like I mentioned in the previous video, is changing the SSH port. Now, typically, the SSH falls on, by default, to port 22. However, what you can do is, you can go into the SSH folder, into the configuration file, and you can change this port address to something else that is not that port. You can also make it to specifically listen to only your IP address instead of every IP address in the world. Now, you can disable the ability to log in with a password, or you can keep a password. If you decide to continue with a password, then essentially you're leaving yourself vulnerable to cracking. Now, this is extremely common where they test hundreds of thousands of passwords all at once to try and get the answer. What you can alternatively do, which I'm going to leave a link in the description on how to do this from Hostinger, is basically set up an SSH key. It's really nice, and this is actually how you should be doing it. Each developer should have their own SSH key to which they access the server with. Now, other than that, let's get into the other ways that you can secure your server. So the first one that I like to do near immediate use of a server is setting up fail to ban. Fail to ban is your go-to. This should be something that you install almost right away. It is the holy grail, essentially, of protection. This program is absolutely marvelous. It is everyone's worst nightmare, essentially, is to get on the failed ban list. However, you must use it with extreme caution, because you can end up banning yourself if you're a dork. And let's be honest here, there are some folks who are a dork. Now, what we're going to do here is we just installed it, sudo apt install fail to ban -y. Going to full screen this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to enable the service. We're going to type in sudo systemctl start fail to ban. We're going to type sudo systemctl enable fail to ban, so that way it starts on boot. You can see that now it's synchronizing and getting ready to go. Now we're going to double check it. Sudo systemctl status fail to ban. And you can see here already right off the bat, it's done. It's complete. But now we need to check the configuration. So we can do cd / etc / fail to ban. And now we can ls it. And we can take a look at the jail config here. Nano jail.conf. And we can see here the default ban time is equal to 1 hour. The SSHD is true, but these are all commented out. So I would highly recommend actually, one second here. I would recommend actually enabling these. Whenever it is not showing this, it means it is usually disabled. So we want to enable these. We're just going to go through this. You can see the ban increments, for example, the amount of time frame, the maximum time frame, the growth of the increments. If you want to make it like more and more of a multiplier, so say it's 1 day, but you have a multiplier of 7, then the next time it's 7 days, and so on and so forth. The ignoring, the ban times, the fine times. Basically, you can set up all the filterings and everything else through here. Now, the ports and such need to go through here as well. So we're going to take a look through that. So we can see here that if we want to add in logging for MySQL, all we have to do is add in this section under MySQLD and the following file / etc / mycnf, which is extremely useful. Now, the next thing that you can do, other than enabling fail to ban and going through this, and I would highly encourage you to watch further videos, for example, on how detailed this can get, because you can watch like 10 hours worth of videos, but trust me, it's complicated. Now, the next thing that you can do here essentially is just watch a bunch of YouTube videos on fail to ban. There are folks who take literally 10 hours out of their day just to configure fail to ban to exactly how they want. You can use the default settings for the most part, but I would recommend that you do some sort of configuration just so it's different for the vast majority. But moving forward, what I would also recommend that you enable is your firewall, which is, let's see here, sudo apt get install IP tables. Now, IP tables is essentially what you can use to decide what is and isn't allowed to go through. So if you do / or sudo IP tables -l-v, we can see here the policies are in and out of place. So in the case of wanting to make a allowance of 3306, sudo IP tables -a input -p tcp //d port 3306 -j accept. Oh, I see the issue. The spacebar is right there. And voila. And now we will check again. And here we are. Now, in this case, we didn't require the destination for where it's allowed to come from. So it's accepting, as you can see, from anywhere, which is not the best. So we can make some modifications, which is an S 192.168.1.100. And now if we go back to the command, we can see that while there's one command for anywhere, there's also another command for specifically from that IP address. Now, if you want to delete a command table entry, such as the mistake that we made in regards to allowing everything, instead of -a, you just simply put -d. And now when you look at it again, you'll see that it is no longer there. Now, keep in mind that this is another one of those things where you need to set up how you want. So in this case, you need to enable 8085, 3724, and of course, look into other things such as how do you want to do your MySQL? Are you going to require an SSH key with that as well? Are you going to do it via passwords? Whatever it is that you want to do in this case, that is how you're going to do it. The second one that you're going to want to do, which is basically the front end for IP tables, is UFW. So if you do sudo UFW status, we'll see it's inactive. So we can do sudo UFW enable. We see if it's on. Firewall is active and enabled on system startup. So it's going to basically be enabled once we reboot and good to go. And then what we can do with that one is we can also do sudo UFW allow from all 3306, I think. Ah, that's right. Sudo UFW allow 3306. There we go. Now, if you want it from anything, then sudo UFW allow from IP address, for example, to any port through 306. Quite literally like this. So from 127.0.0.1 to any port through 306. Poof. And we'll add it. Then you do UFW status, sudo UFW status, and you can see now that we have a bunch of lists. So if you want to remove, for example, then it would be deny. Except we want to make sure that, you know, it's not like that. So we're going to do sudo UFW deny through 306. And now if we do sudo status, we can see here, it is now in the denial range from anywhere, but only allowing from 127. So now, if we go, just with this firewall alone, if we try to connect, you will see that it is going to deny me. So now if you want to delete one of these, what you could type is sudo UFW status numbered, get number order, and then type sudo UFW delete 1, 2, 3, for example. Proceed with operation. Yes, we'll delete it. Sudo UFW status, and then delete number 2 and here. I remember there used to be a way, or there probably still is, but I'm doing it wrong, where you can delete multiple rules at once. However, it seems that's not the case at the moment. I'm just forgetting the command, which in any case, just pull up the help command, which is right here. Usage. Enable, disable, allow args. Let's see here. Default argument, logging level, allow args. And, well, nevertheless, it's right here. You can find it. Now, other than messing around with that, now when you enable the firewall, you have to also enable the ports. Because keep in mind, it was like having your firewall completely disabled. So now you have to allow the ports that you want to actually have open. Otherwise, you're going to get an error that will not allow you to connect. As you can see now, I'm able to connect. But watch. The moment that I do this again, for example, here it is. You can see it was there. UFW. And then I'm going to do the entire command line again, which is sudo UFW status numbered. Sudo UFW delete 1, yes. Then we're going to do the same thing really quick. Sudo UFW delete 1, yes. Now that those are deleted, when we go back into this and we try, you see it right here, trying to connect. So if you're configuring your firewall, make sure that in that same process, before you reboot, that you enable all the necessary ports that you want enabled. Otherwise, you're going to run into connection issues. And then you're going to have even bigger problems because now that you can't connect, you have to reset your entire VPS. Now, the next thing that I really want to get into here, which is hilarious, because the majority of folks actually do not do this, which is actually really strange, is disabling your root user. Now, no matter what, on a Linux machine, 9 times out of 10, you're always going to have people trying to connect to your root account, which means root is very dangerous. It's kind of like having a username with the ultimate power, like a president, if you will. And they all know he has the keys to the kingdom, so they're all going to want to target him. Well, of course, if you could just make that king disappear, if you will, so now he's anonymous, now they're going to have to figure out who it is. This is the exact same case with disabling root. So what you can do here is you can go to nano / etc sshd config. Let's see. You can see right about here where it says permit. Let me right here. Permit root login prohibit password. This right here needs to be set to no. So currently, with the way this works on this hashtag is it's prohibiting the password if we unhashtag this. So if we unhashtagged it, then it would prohibit the passwords, but it would allow SSH keys. This is something I would strongly recommend doing. Now, the other thing that I would suggest you do is to understand how the file system works, or at least get a better grasp of the file system within Linux. Essentially, what you would do is you would make a user, including groups, and I'll show you in a moment how this works, specifically for the core, so all the major core files and everything running and anything related to that can be found within the core running group. Now, the master user has the ability to access everyone. Okay, it's basically the root, essentially. He can take a look at the devs, he can take a look at the workers, he can go and take a look at the core running. However, if you notice, these are all one-way tracks. Now, you can allow devs to be able to talk to the core running, and the workers and the devs to be able to have a communication with each other, just like this. So the workers never get access to the core, the devs have access to the core, and the devs also have access to all the workers' files. But if you see here, the master is able to access everything. This makes it to where you, as the master user, and the devs are the only people who are accessing the core's files. Now, keep in mind here that this is still not optimal. However, it is a method that you can approach this with, and it is primarily up to you and how you want to manage your server. Is what I was personally suggest doing, separating your developers into different sets of developers. So I would have, for example, your tier 1 dev, and I would have, for example, your tier 2 dev. Now, and the tier 1 developers, these are the developers who are client side, essentially. So you can name them, for example, client devs. And the tier 2 devs are your actual core devs. Now, the client devs, they don't need to have direct access to the core itself. 9 times out of 10, they don't. And mind you, this is only on a 1 server setup. Okay, now if you had multiple servers, such as a developer server and everything else, which is highly recommended, then you can maybe set up your changes a little bit differently. But now, what you can do is you can have multiple compartments within this user directory. We're just gonna quickly do it like this, to where the tier 1 devs are able to access the first half, which has all the client-side configurations, where the core devs are able to access the entire thing, including that of, say, the other devs. But I would personally just completely ignore the devs over there and have the core devs being able to access the core itself. This makes it so where the client devs files are separate on its own, and the core devs files are also separate on its own. What you can also do in this case as well is implement a safety precaution, which is, I find, extremely important, where if this is the quote-unquote developer code. You would then have a safety configuration to which only you would be able to confirm it. That goes into prod server code to verify the authenticity of all data going in and out of the developer code and the production code, and only you have that access. Now, that being said, there are many papers onto how to properly set this up. However, the general consensus is your MySQL server developers need to be separate from your client developers, and your core developers need to be separate from your other folks. Code with code, SQL with SQL, client with client, and they do not touch each other. The person who brings everything together in this is either the manager or, aka, yourself. And the way, if you do this, you're going to protect data breaches, because if your core devs decide to rat out anything, then you can say, okay, my core is compromised, but all my other parts of my server are not. Or my client is compromised, but my core part is not. Or my core is not. Or, once again, my SQL is compromised, but the rest is not. It further allows you to condense everything into smaller cubes to where only pieces are falling. In practice, this is creating what's called user accounts and groups. Now, user accounts and groups are, if you will, slightly complicated. So if I just Google it quick, Ubuntu explaining user accounts. If we go here, and we go to the user management of Ubuntu, it very vividly explains how to set this up properly, how to create the accounts, how to chown to make it specifically for them, how to move it, and everything else. Something to keep in mind, however, is the permissions. The permissions themselves are what are important here. For example, you can see right here, you can remove the world reachable permissions using the following command: sudo mod home username. Please, please, please look through this, because while it's very small, this can have a very big impact on your configuration. The entire setup of your security and the network of your server essentially will define whether or not you will get hacked and how you will get hacked. Now, with that out of the way, with your ports, with understanding the firewalls, with understanding pretty much from A to Z on the things you can do, I expect, as a fellow modder, that servers start to become a lot more secure. I understand that this video is a lot of theoreticals rather than showing you physically how to set this up. However, it is specifically because I do not want you to just make it exactly as I set it up for you, but rather show you what you can do. Because if I show you how to set it up from A to Z and my personal preference, then everyone who watches this video is going to set it up like that, which then allows hackers to then understand what parameters you probably set it towards. Therefore, as I said in the beginning, please change the defaults and see to it as you deem fit. The second and final thing I would like you to review is disabling IPv6. IPv6 is not necessary whatsoever. There is no point in having it enabled, and it is located in this directory if it is here. So we're going to sudo c. We're not going to sudo that. We're going to cd into that path, cd etc. cd systemctl. We're going to see if it exists. It seems like it does not exist, which is good, because if it was there, it would be cd systemctl.d/99.systemctl1.config. This would be basically where the file would be, and it does not exist. If that was the case, you would need to disable IPv6 running it that way. The last thing that is extremely important is understanding how to monitor your server logs. If you go to cd/var/log, you're going to find a directory with all the logs inside of your server. If you hit ls, you're going to see them all. Now, to check the logs, you're going to type sudo cat syslog. And what we're going to do is you're going to see everything that is currently going on with the system. The last thing I would like you to do is to be able to separate your user access. Within your Linux and within your SQL, you need to go through and create individual users with limited access. I would create a developer account. I would ask for his IP address. That way I can lock it specifically to his IP, and I would have the password that I give him, not what he gives me, that is randomized. From here, I would add object, and I would pick specifically what tables he needs with a very specific access. If it's achievement database, then I would say, okay, I'm going to hit approve. I'm going to allow select, show, alter, create view, delete. That means he can delete things. He just can't bulk drop things. So dropping means like permanent delete, complete removal in bulk. I'll allow index, inserts, reference, update. I'll allow all of that, if you will. Maybe I won't even allow delete. Maybe I won't even allow alter. Maybe I won't even allow creating. Maybe I won't even allow inserting, and I just want him to be able to see the database so he can pull data from it and then give me the SQL queries. Because he can give you the queries, and then you can run them all and go through it that way.